Welcome.
Hello.
Come on in. Have a seat. Sit. Well, welcome to the actually this is the first product event of the year for Product School. And I'm gonna tell you what Product School is first, and then we'll go into the actual presentation. And you can pass me the. Oh. So Product School. How many are you familiar with Product School? Great. How many have taken the courses of Product School? Nobody. Okay, great. So, the ones that know about Product School, right? There's also a Slack that you're not part of. You should, because in there you also have like job leads. You can get not just the networking, but people that can tell you, where you are in your product career. You can get that help also on the Slack. Product School now has. Copy this link over here, take a picture of that. They have their own job board too. So if you're looking for, just an idea for BAs, DevOps, PM, PO jobs, that's a great world to go to. Okay, and if you haven't joined the Slack yet for Product School, here it is the link too. I can forward this slide too if you want on the meetup. And that's my next question. How many came here through the meetup? Nobody. Great. Oh, through the meetup?
The Product School meetup?
Yeah. And I don't know, just randomly, how do you guys hear about this event?
Slack.
Slack?
At the Venture Cafe.
Venture Cafe? Venture Cafe? The email?
Not just being here.
Just being here.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
All right, well. So they've done a lot of talks all over the world now. They used to be just in San Francisco, and then they opened it up for any city to have their own chapters. That's when I approached them. I said, listen, we can get this going in Miami. There's a whole bunch of product managers here in Miami. They accepted, and all these dots that you see over here as where they actually give you the classes, that they provide. They provide the part-time, the online, and also part-time online, and no, that's it. 17 campuses they have now. Next. These are the certifications that you can get with Product School now. How many of you are product managers right now?
Not certified.
Not certified, no, but product manager. The role. The role. Business analyst, DevOps, product owners. All right, great. How many would like to become a product manager? Okay, great. That's what is great. With our speaker today, you're gonna have a good information on that. So the certificates are available for you to take in person or online. Thanks. They also provide corporate training, which means you can hire, Product School to do a customized training for your company. Okay. And with that, we're gonna go to our speaker of the night.
Push.
Mr.
I hate that
Diogo
picture.
Ribeiro, what does product management exist? He works at Capital One, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself.
Thank you. Thank you, Tito. Welcome, everyone. I think I'm going to stand here with the camera. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. First thing I want to say is, for some of you may know me or may not, I tend to be participating a lot in the Miami community. I used to teach a blockchain class at Miami Dade. I also had my first startup pitch 5 years ago in this exact room. So this room has a good vibe for me. So I'm gonna play with it. So my name is Diogo Ribeiro. I work at Capital One as a product manager. Before, I was actually a lawyer, so I transitioned into product management. And since I started in product management, there are two questions that I get a lot. Number one is, what is it that you do? I have no idea what a product manager does. And number two, why do we need you? It's not really vocal. No one really tells me. I can just sense it and feel it. And every time I get one of those two questions, I can't help but feel like a father having their kid come up to you and say, I don't need you to help me tie my shoe. Or for the second part, when they ask me what I do, it's like a kid asking, where do babies come from? It's hard to know. It's really difficult to me to figure out where to begin. product management is a new role. So I'm gonna give it a shot today. And what I'm gonna do today is, it's my personal experience, my personal opinion. I wanna be sharing a little bit about my startup journey that I had, my experience at the organization that I'm at right now, Capital One, and also some stories from different things that I saw from different startups and different entrepreneurs that I've read about. To do this talk is gonna be divided in 3 sections, right? Every time I do one section, I'm gonna stop, take a break, because I can't talk for very long, I get tired. And I'm let you ask me questions. We're gonna have a little conversation where you can ask me like any questions you have, any doubts you have, something completely unrelated to what I'm saying because you're curious about something like my accent, for instance. So it's gonna be 3 parts. Number 1, it's gonna be on the why we struggle as product managers. Number 2 is gonna be on the what. What do we do as product managers? And it's more related to my opinion on what we do as a product manager. And finally, it's gonna be on the how. How is it that you can have a better chance of being successful as a product manager, all right? So first part, on the why. About 6 months ago, right at the beginning of starting to work at Capital One, I was having a conversation with my manager at a coffee shop. We were sitting there, we were chatting, and as we were chatting, we were talking about how difficult it was to engage with the tech team. They weren't collaborating, Conan. The tech team, we were having a hard time because they were not including us in meetings, they were making decisions they shouldn't make. It was tough to communicate with them. There was some friction between product and tech. And we were sitting there talking and we were trying to see why. Because there were other areas in Capital One where we had a good relationship, tech and product and tech. And what was happening, we realized, was that that specific team that we were coming to had never worked with product. It was their first time. So their whole history, they were figuring out and working with fires all the time by themselves, never having anyone in product. So this guy comes in, not a technical guy, and started to talk to them and trying to decide on priorities and what to do. And they're like, who are you? I mean, I'm a computer scientist, I'm an engineer. So it was difficult. And while we were having this conversation, I couldn't help to notice that all of a sudden, I got distracted. And I saw someone wearing a doctor's robe, a white doctor robe there. And my manager and I have a good relationship. And I was like, wait a second. I just want to share with you some of my thoughts that I'm getting right now. I'm looking at this doctor coming in. And immediately, I'm assuming a bunch of things. I'm assuming that person is probably smart, hardworking, dedicated, spent 10 years studying to get to the point where they are wearing a robe. And I thought to myself, I don't know who that person is, but if I was feeling somewhat of a heart pain, if I was feeling nervous about doing this presentation, I started feeling oh my God, I'm feeling like I'm having some chest pain, I would immediately go to that person and ask for help. It's I would trust my life to that person. So I was sharing those thoughts with that person, and then I was thinking to myself, what if my manager and I were having an issue related to technology, and it was a do or die, we didn't know what to do, and some guy walked in that I'm an expert in product management. I would not approach that guy. Would you? I mean, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be enough for me to approach. And immediately, one of the key things that I realized at that point on the why it's so difficult to be a product manager is, there are 2 ways you can earn respect. Number 1, through recognition, your reputation, or a symbol, like the doctor's robe. Number 2, time. With product, it's very difficult and very unlikely that you're going to immediately be recognized as a great product manager. So the only way you can do that is through time. It's through working with your team. And that's one of the main things that I started to learn about product management. It's a new field. Unlike doctors, who have had thousands of years to get to the point where they're at, where they had different steps, different acknowledgements, and different universities, and different things for them to earn the role, and a lot of regulation behind it. With product managers, there's not much out there. We're doing it right now. You're seeing it. That schooling, that learning is coming through us. And every company has their own way. Everyone has their own culture. Everyone has their own way of doing things. So that was like the first key thing that I realized, and I want to convey to you. If you're thinking about product management, this is something you want to go into. It's like the Wild Wild West. You are making your reputation. You're setting the trend. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm having to try to organize my thoughts and my theories and present it so I myself learn, because there isn't much there. There's some people talking about it, but it's not as organized as like this big book you get on one specific section of medicine. But that's it. The first section, I wanted to talk to you about why we struggle, and one of the key things you have to realize as a product manager. I want to leave it up to you, open right now for any questions you may have.
What would you say is the biggest disconnect between you as a project manager to the actual software engineers?
So me as a product manager and a software engineer. So here's the thing. It's one of the key lessons that you learn as a product manager. Just to give you an example. Let's say we're trying to build a new tool, right? And the new tool is related to like a database. It's going to be a database for storing images. And I go, and we have to do this. It's a problem. I have to solve for it. So I go online and I start researching technologies, right? The next day I come in and I come, let's say, Wikipedia ready in terms of the depth of information that I have. And I say, I think, based on one day of experience, we should do this. The software engineer is going to look at me and it's going to be like, sorry, but I can give you 10 reasons why not. One, our systems are not compatible. Two, this is not scalable. Three, it's too expensive. The code, the programming language, no one knows how to program that language. So I'll be like, wow, I said something really stupid. So what you do realize as a product manager, like one of the key lessons that you can learn is the best way for you to have a discussion or a talk with your tech team is never to come with them with a technical solution, but to come with results from the research that you're doing with the users. So I can never say, I think we should use this technology because the programming language seems more efficient, but I can say, I've done research with 100 people, and they are asking for this. This is something the engineer cannot argue against, because I'm coming them with the problem. How you solve it is going to derive from the problem. So the disconnect here is, sometimes as a product manager, you want to step more into the technical field, but you shouldn't. Your goal, we're going to talk more in the next two sections, is more to like work with your team and always understand the customer. Any other questions?
So with that in mind, in your own words, how would you describe the difference between a product manager and a project manager?
Like you said, projects.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Not at all. And it's a huge, there's a lot, people get it confused. There's some ways it's similar, right? One of the similarities is we want to deliver something. We want to deliver a new feature. We want to deliver a new product. We want to deliver, like a piece of like something bigger, or we want to deliver like from beginning to end. The big difference between a project manager and a product manager, and it differs from company to company, is with a product manager, you're more worried about your deadlines, the resources you have to achieve those deadlines, and how it all adds up for you to deliver something. With product, my goal is figure it out. All I'm telling you is you own this piece, you own a product, or you own a feature of a product. It's what happens in a big company. If you work for Instagram, you're not gonna own Instagram as a product. You might be the head of Instagram, but as a product manager, you might own just like likes, or even closer, you might just own like a specific measurement of the likes. Difference here is, as a product manager, if I manage the like button, I'm having to prioritize. I'm having to decide what we do, when we do it, how we're gonna measure success, and how to present it and sell it to the entire organization. That's what I do as a product. So the difference here is having the ownership to be able to decide on what to do and how to do it and when, versus just managing how things are delivered when you're a project manager. Oh, question in the back.
What is the difference then between product owner and product manager? Because I thought that product owner is the one who makes
I honestly don't know. I'm both. I am a product owner and a product manager in my organization. So
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm considered a product manager. However, I have seen organizations in which I've also interviewed for as a product owner. The distinction was the product managers are more communicating with the customer, managing their expectations in terms of like what features they're going to build, kind of more of the creators, but the product owners are going to be with the developers more. They're owning the stories or creating the user stories. More like short-term goals about like, okay, this is the product that we're doing. We already have it scoped out. We're going to describe how it's going to work, and then also working with the QA team. A little bit more like short-term in terms of like product managers, at least in that setup, which was American Express. That they had that distinction there. But I do both. So.
And in my company, there's no distinction. So it's one of those key things that I was referring to in terms of it's a new field. It's being there. Sometimes you may go in and you might see a job description for a product manager, and when you read it, you say that's not a product manager. That's more like either a project manager or a business analyst, but not a product manager. So it's tough, especially this is something we can talk about more. But when you're looking at companies that have existed for 50 years plus, and they're seeing all this like Google's, Facebook's, Amazon's coming in with the product managers, and they're trying to adapt, it's hard because you're mixing the old with the new. And when they come in and they have all these stakeholders and they're thinking about the P&L and shareholder, maximizing shareholder wealth, so it's things that people are still trying to figure out. And some of the key examples come from Google, from Facebook, from Amazon, and those companies. I'm going to go into the second section. I'm going to talk a little bit about the what. What is one of the key things that I'm constantly focusing on my day-to-day? And this is personal, this is my own theory, right? Because if you could go out there and you start to look at the definition of product manager, you're probably going to see something like figuring out like what features and product to deliver to the customer that add value and also takes into account like a business goal or improving the business deliverable. So the second part, talking about the what, actually came from a podcast that I was listening to on the two founders of Instagram. When I was listening to their podcast, there was a part where they were saying like 1 year in after they launched, they started to notice a lot of new competitors coming in. And they were like checking them in and they were saying, wow, these new people are coming in. Even though we are a year ahead, they're coming in with millions of dollars. There's a lot of investment. And they shared that they started getting really worried and really freaked out. I was like, they're gonna kill us. We don't have as much money. When they were sold for $1 billion, there were 13 people working at a time for Instagram. It's like we're small. We're like bootstrapping right now. But what they realized as they kept working on the product is the customer doesn't care. The customer doesn't care on how much you get from a VC company, from a venture capital company in funding. They care about how much value they get out of your product. That's what they realized. So looking at how much money people are getting from the beginning was a distraction. And they realized, let's focus on the product. And that's what they did, and that's why they were so successful. What I realized is, and what you're gonna notice from this part of my conversation with you is, for me, value and meaning, you're gonna see, in my conversation here, they're interchangeable. You can compare both. And what I realized from my personal stories is, I heard their story and it was like beautiful. It's like sometimes as an entrepreneur, as a startup founder, even working for an organization, you get distracted. And what I found myself was every time I kept going back to meaning, I kept getting myself more focused and delivering what was right. So my personal story is, from the startup world, I was going to a coffee shop a lot, and I started to get really upset with the fact that I was coming in and being really loyal to a coffee shop. And even though I was coming in every day, studying and going to the coffee shop, a tourist would walk in and pay the same price I did. So for 2 years, it bothered me. I was like, oh, I don't get that. There's nothing really out there that really rewards me for being a loyal customer. So that problem meant something for me, and it stayed in my head for 2 years until I came up with a potential solution. A dynamic discounting. Every time you buy a cup of coffee, your discount goes up. So you buy a coffee today, it's $2, next day is $1.98, $1.96, it keeps going down and down and down until a maximum. But why my startup was so different, and I thought it was back then, was if you stop going, that discount would decrease. And would go back up if you kept going. So it's directly related to frequency. So that's what I started doing here, in this exact room. My first pitch for that startup in 2014 was in this room. Was just putting my idea out in the world. And just talking to people and just letting them know, hey, here's my idea. It comes from me sitting at a coffee shop. Here's what I believe in. Some people started to listen. And I was lucky enough that two co-founders, felt like that specific problem meant something for them, and they joined me. One now is like, after we failed, is really high up at a artificial intelligence company. The other works for Facebook. And what we realized going into the journey of building the app is after we built and we threw it out in the world, not knowing what was going to happen, customers also found meaning in that product. They thought, this is cool, I like this. Instead of going to many coffee shops, I'm going to go to this one coffee shop, because if I go a lot, if I go 30 times in 30 days, because that's how if you went 20 times in 30 days, you wouldn't achieve the maximum. You had to go every day. Then I'm going to pay $1 instead of $2 in this coffee shop. That's really cool. And it got addicted, and we saw people using it a lot. And after a while, we got that idea, and we started pitching. And investors saw value in what we were saying, and invested money in us. So the summary of this journey is, every time, in every step of the way, there was meaning. Meaning for me, meaning for my co-founders, meaning for my customers, and meaning for my investors. And I took that to heart. Now I'm working in a big company. And you might think, oh, it's not the same thing. You're working in a big corporation, many people, more bureaucracy. But this morning, 10 a.m., I have my stand-up. And I'm talking with my team. And it's 6 of us. 6 engineers, there's 1 Scrum Master. And we have a designer, but it's not always participating in the meetings. But every day, first person comes in, is like, I'm working on this. And I always ask them, why? What's the purpose behind it? Like, oh, I'm doing this because it relates to this that we want to achieve, this goal. We want to do banking for good. Relates to this mission. So I'm getting all the stuff that people are doing, deriving meaning, and figuring out, yeah, we're going in the right direction. So then I can go back to the stakeholders and tell them, look, we are building something for you that's valuable. Keep investing in us, right? And I have to go to the customers and tell them, look, this is going to be meaningful to you, and here's why. So that's my key role as a product manager. I'm always having to find meaning everywhere. Everything I do, it's meaning, it's value. I'm going to stop here again and let you guys ask questions. If you have questions about any of those topics that I touched on.
Are you specifically like writing out the scope of works? Are you then writing like user stories or acceptance criteria that somebody else in the organization?
So yeah, so you're also a product manager, correct? Oh. I'm on it, don't worry. You're also a product manager, right?
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Natalia.
Natalia.
Yeah.
So what Natalia is asking is, and here's how it works. We have, on the organizational level, we have the big goals that we have. One of the big goals we might be to just reduce costs, right? As a product manager, I have to know that, and I have to know that all the time. So I see that big goal, then I go back and I look at the product that I own. So in my example, let's say I own letters. If I own letters, I have to figure out how I can do something to further that goal. So what I do is, I look at some of the potential opportunities that I have by talking to the customer. I figure out like what are potential features or things I can improve. Then go talk to some of the customers. In this case, my customer can be an end customer, or it can be someone in operations. I go up to them and I start having a conversation. Hey, would this benefit you? Would this have a big impact? If it does, then I have to translate that into what Natalia is referring as a story. What is a story? Is anybody familiar with the concept of stories? Product management? Anybody wants to give their own interpretation of what a story is? Go ahead. No, not you, Natalia. You don't want to
Somebody
go.
else.
Somebody else. Tell me what a story is.
Stars? I?
Yes.
Okay. Stars, for me, and my company, it's anything in a product, it delivery value to the customer. For me, this is a definition of stars.
That's very good.
Anything delivery value to customer, only this.
Correct. That's a really good definition. To make it even more, let me really distill it down. Everything that I do, every action that I take, I have to go back and write it down. Let me give you an example. As an operations manager, I need to be able to visualize a report of all the letters that I'm sending in and out, that I'm sending and receiving, so that I can control costs. That, what I described to you, could be a story, right? And all I'm doing is, I don't have to see it from the perspective of the engineer. I have to see it from my perspective. So I go to my team and I tell them, look, here's something that we need to do. We have to create this feature for the ops person that's going to decrease costs because it aligns to decreasing costs up there. If I do this, if I create this, we have to figure out what kinds of work you need to do on the back end, on the system that we have today to achieve this goal. The criteria for succeeding in this goal is completeness. So we have to go back after we make the changes and ask them, hey, is this report good enough? Do you accept this as successful for having built that better report for letters so you can control costs? They say yes, we completed the story. So I had to define what the story was. But your question was related to?
No, like if you're actually like writing them down like in your project management tool, like if Jira or whatever. it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing Natalia was mentioning is Jira. Jira is a very common tool used to be able to know like what big features you're working on, plus what stories you're building, and plus what you're delivering. So we all use it in different organizations, and the timings that we have are managed too.
So how do you spell stars? Like the stars in the sky or story?
Story, like a story. Like I'm telling you a story right now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm curious why your idea failed.
Okay.
I'm just curious.
It failed. It's funny because each of the founders has a different explanation. My explanation is actually that because I was one of the founders, but I was more in charge of sales. And what I realized, it was very difficult to sell because it was a double dip that I was asking the customer. I would go in and I literally went personally to all the coffee shops around here, Wynwood, Coral Gables, everywhere. And I went to talk to the business owners and I was like, look, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give you more traffic, but you have to sign up and get some of your items to give a discount, and you have to pay as a fee. So I was asking them for two things, and that was hard, and we figured out that wasn't scalable. That for me was like one of the main reasons we failed. The other founder said it was also because it was too much friction in our user experience. And that's something really important. For us, it's funny, this is actually what we used. So you would walk in, right, with your phone, you downloaded the app, you're about to buy a coffee shop, and you literally tell the person at the counter, hey, I have a 4% discount. The person on the counter would have to input that number, you would pay whatever discount it was, and then it would go, fine, scan the QR code. You would scan it, and the app would get the higher discount. So it was very manual, it's too many steps, and that created friction. That's another reason people say we failed. The other co-founder says we failed. It was a good experience though. Derailed me because I was in law, and what led me to coming and doing product and really having a passion for it is because of this experience that I had. Any other questions? No? All right, the third section. The last part of this conversation that we're having today, it's a weird conversation because everyone's like on the back. But the last part of the conversation is on the how. How we can do one extremely important thing to be successful. And the idea for this third section came from a book that I love. The book's called Traction. And it's one of the key things I'm going to talk about today is traction. And the book, one of the main ideas that the book says is there's something called the 50% rule. And one part of the book says a lot of failed startups have successful products. Chances are, if you build a startup, you knew how to build a product. You got to that point. What failed startups don't have are customers. And he says, you should spend 50% of your time on product and 50% of your time on traction. Allocate half of your attention to what you're building and half of your attention of who's going to use it and why. That was the key thing. It was extremely eye-opening when I read that. And it's something that I follow all along. And the idea behind traction is getting enough interest or support to make progress or succeed, achieve something, right? And here's what I realized. Traction actually applies to almost anything. For me, what I realize is if I want to build anything, even within a bank, right? Even in a big organization, and I say, I want to build a database to store all the letters you send me, all the IDs you send me and everything. I want to build this really cool database so that if anything happens, we can go and pull that information and send it back to you or communicate with you better. Two things that the company is going to, off the bat, ask for. Why should we invest money? Why can't we use this system we already have? And two, everyone else that I'm going to have to sell that to in my company say, why are we going to have to invest time and resources to have to like upgrade to use your system? Why? If I don't worry about that, if I off the bat says, oh my God, and this is a big mistake product managers do, it's like, I had this really cool idea. And they go in and they build it. And they think that if you build something, they will come. That's not true. It's never true. Think about how many distractions you're getting, right? I'm probably like the 5th thing you thought about doing today, because you probably had so many more editing stuff to do. So somehow, thank you, and thank you, Allan, for helping us out. Like you saw me through all the distraction that's happening, right? And I figure out, like, when it comes to that question of why we need you, this part on traction is the most important. But there's two different conversations that I found in my experience. The one conversation that you can have in terms of traction relates to stakeholders. So the people in the company, top management positions, deciding, should we have product or not? And my response to that is, think about it. If you look at the top 10 companies 20 years ago, I was looking at the list the other day. The majority were oil companies. It was the ExxonMobil, the Shell, the Chevrons, BP. Come on in. Come on in. No worries. So if you look at those companies back in the day, oil, a resource, was the main thing they were worried about. Something physical, something you can touch. And most of their work related to like how do we extract, transport, and how do we distribute that. Fast forward, what do we have now? What are some of the top some of the top companies in general in the world? Apple, what else? Google, Amazon, Alibaba. What's going on? Think about what they do on a day-to-day. It's data, right? But have you guys ever stopped to wonder what data is? Most of data, it's really simple. But it's information about what? If you think about it.
How people work.
Huh?
Understanding the interests of people.
Yes.
People's interests.
At the end of the day, all data is it's a manifestation of human behavior. All it's doing is recording, oh, that person, I saw actually, Jack just clicked like on 5 pictures on Instagram. And he did it at nighttime. So I'm observing Jack there, and am I figuring out like what time is he doing it? So if you think about it, before, you had to get this workforce to figure out, hey, you worry about distribution, you're gonna worry about extraction, you're gonna worry about transportation. Now, it's become more difficult because there's no stop. into how much further you can dig as to the human behavior. We haven't achieved the maximum on, can I actually get to a point where Jack over there won't stop looking at his phone all day? Maybe. If I send enough of the stuff that he likes and I start playing with his psychology and I start looking at him, potentially I can get him hooked. I can get him in there. So, because data is becoming a new oil, you having to have a different kind of, it's a different kind of role where you have to have someone dedicated to exploring human behavior. And that's why product manager exists. That's from like the stakeholder perspective, right? If you look from a team perspective, right? And that's one of the big attritions that we have, working with my engineers. Let's say we're building that storage component where we're just gonna store stuff. And you don't have product managers. You have like the old way of doing things, more related to IT. If you have that kind of behavior, you might have someone woke up and had an idea. It can make a change in the system that's gonna take him like a week, uninterrupted. And if he makes that change, it's gonna be a huge spike and a much better improvement. So he's like all excited, has a family, has to like get his kids to work, has to go to work, gets to work, finally ready to start working. He's like, oh my, I have to do a presentation to the stakeholder on the stuff that we're doing and why. Okay, so he prepares for that presentation in 1 hour, gives that presentation, is done. He's gonna go back to working on that improvement, but realizes, oh man, I have to do an interview with a user because I can't reschedule. I rescheduled it 5 times. So he goes and prepares and studies the user, goes back. If you get the picture, what's happening here is you realize if you don't separate and have the engineers worrying about building, the designers worrying about being creative and thinking of creative solutions, you're not maximizing the potential of the team. It's kind of like a Formula One car. If you have the driver, when they do a pit stop, step out of his car and put the wheel in, you become super inefficient. What product is doing here is I care about traction, so I care about before we build, like who we're gonna sell it to, and I also gonna care about how we're building. Is this the best, simplest way for you to understand something? Like, is this too complicated? Are there too many steps? That's what I care about on my day-to-day. Are you happy? Are you happy with what you're doing? Like, if you're going to my app right now, are you happy with the amount of time it took for me to deliver it? And did I get the right items to you delivery? That's my goal. Is to really understand the customer, to understand like what's gonna get us traction and movement and improvement, and also worried about the product. So it's a combination of all three. For me, in my experience, it's been one, I'm never gonna earn respect. Even if I move from one team to the other, I always have to prove myself and be really humble. 2, I'm always caring about meaning. Meaning for you as my engineer, meaning for the product, meaning to the stakeholders, meaning to the customers, meaning for everyone. And finally, traction. Like, if you're doing a product, that's only 50% of my job. The other 50% is like, how and who do we sell it to? All right? That's the end of my conversation with you, but hope you guys have questions, and let me know if you have any questions.
I have a question. What the tools do you use in every day to management features, the management new projects, Trello, Sheets, Basecamp?
So depends. For my work, and I've tried many tools. I'm one of these people that I'm never 100% sure that I found the perfect tool. At my organization right now, we use Jira and a lot of Google software, even like for personal stuff. But mainly we rely on Jira. I personally got a product pad myself. I asked for approval to like, hey, I want to test this out, see if it's good. And I liked it. Personally, I've used Asana and I use Trello to help friends and manage their like work stuff. But Trello is probably one of my favorites for like super simple stuff. If you want to get complicated, you use something called Jira. And Jira, like,
Jira's a lot more granular. Speaking
It's
of
super
developers.
complicated,
It
I
is
think
very robust, but I've become an
Can some of you share why you're here? Like you, for example, like why did you come here today? Do you have like and I don't know your name, the lady that's looking back.
Me?
Yeah, for example, you. Like, why did you come to the talk today? I want to pick up people a little bit.
So I work for a company, I do digital marketing for a company, but I used to be a product manager for a while. It was a temporary project within a company, it's a software development company. So I was like, self-taught product manager. So I like read some books and we built it and it was pretty successful. And then I transitioned back to digital marketing. But at this point, I'm kind of thinking that I really want to go back. That's why.
You're missing too much.
It's not that I miss it too much. It's just I miss this piece working, like be liaison between business and tech. Like being in marketing, I'm more, business and like it's a different story. So I found for myself that I would enjoy like as a next, move for my career, I would rather go in a little bit different direction.
Yeah.
And I have been working in tech companies for like 15 years.
Okay.
So I found for myself that I really get on really well with tech people, and that's the value that I bring to organizations, and that's easy for me. So that's why I'm here too.
Thank you.
And my name is Olga.
Well, it's one of the it's interesting because when I transitioned from law into product management, one of the key mistakes that I made at the beginning of my career was idealizing law. So my idea of law was like, wow, like you see in the court arguing in front of the judge and talking to your client wearing a suit. But when it came to the day-to-day, I'm like, wow, it's boring. Like you really are on your computer all day reading cases and trying to make an argument. I love my day-to-day. Like, and you can clearly see like, I love working with engineers and trying to build stuff that's gonna have an impact on the customer. Love it. And had I known that was going to be the day-to-day, much earlier in my career, I would have picked that like immediately. This goes back to what I think where you're mentioning. Someone else, some of the late comers here, the person that made the noise at the door. why are you here?
Why are you kicking the door?
Hi. Why I'm here, I think it was interesting to see or hear that somebody from product, I work at a software company, and my day-to-day is usually running around from sales to marketing to product. And it's very interesting to see the dynamic on how it works and how everything really depends on each other to get a product out into the world and for customers. And I also thought it was very interesting that you work for Capital One, so came in to hear how you tie all this together and how product management really is an extension of what an entire company is. So,
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm gonna keep answering. I do have a request and an ask. For those of you who have the iPhone, if you can scan this QR code, it's only gonna be 3 questions where I'm getting feedback. And I'm gonna keep going, I just wanna make sure, if you can give me feedback, you can tell me like it was horrible, it's okay. I have no ego. But going back to what you said, the tying it together, I'm doing it right now. I'm realizing because it's a new field, there is a lot of literature on it. There's a really good books that I can recommend. But it's extremely flexible. It changes all the time. New technologies coming in, new industries are popping up. Like, do you guys know, probably one of you is gonna guess, do you know what's the most the subject that people are reading the most for 2020? You know, like, what's the #1 subject people are most interested in? Want to give it a shot? Huh?
Technology.
No, more specific than technology.
Blockchain?
No. It went down a lot. It went really bad. It's like 5th now. Someone said it.
User experience.
Someone said it.
AI.
I said.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's the #1. It's just a new field. Right now, my co-founder is like an expert in product management for artificial intelligence, which is extremely niche, right? So what I've figured out myself is the best way I can learn is for me to throw in my weird ideas out and my perception and get feedback. because the only way I can improve and organize my thoughts is by organizing it for you and presenting and getting feedback. This is one of the key things that I do. Also, and some of them informally, and what we're trying to do, and also Nishan, which is also a carnival, and David from the Venture City, we all got together and we're like, what do we do? I was looking at a pie chart on like the different industries of 2019 or 18, and it was like hospitality, professional services, legal. Do you know what the percentage is for technology in Miami? So hospitality is like 12%. You know how much is technology in Miami, the industry?
Less than 1%.
1.8%. So I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to get more people aware of what product manager is. I'm talking to a lot of companies outside the state to try to get them here. I'm trying to like let you guys know how awesome the culture is at Capital One. It's like so many different things that you try to do. And so it never stops for me. Like learning the intersection between sales, product, tech, it's never gonna end. Yeah. Questions?
I read an article once by this guy that created an app, like an email app that's really fast. I don't know if you know the name of it, but his article pretty much had narrowed down like if you ask 60 people, kind of like statistically, you'll get like a directional answer of what you're asking, and then also narrow it down about like the specific way to ask the question to to gauge approval of the product. And his conclusion was not to ask if they like it, to rate it 1 to 10. It was something like ask if they're willing to use it again, or something like that. Is there any of that?
Yeah, no, it resonates with me. I've read a lot about that. It's one of those key things where if I'm sitting with you and I'm pitching a new product, and let me give you an actual example, right? What you're seeing on this is like, it's one thing for me to say, hey, here's a description of my idea, and at the end it's like, do you like it? A good percentage of you is going to say, yeah, I like it. It's really great. But the true test is, are you willing to give me $20 right now for it? Just tag a price. And that's a little different. What I did, for example, last month, December, I had an idea. My problem was, I want to have a social impact, I want to be sustainable, I want to help the environment, me. But I keep procrastinating, I keep pushing it away. So it's like, you know what? I'm turning my product manager hat all the time. I want to turn my product manager hat for that. What is like a minimum viable product that I can build and test to get some feedback? So what I did was I got 2 other friends, we sat together every week, and we said, here's gonna be our MVP. We're gonna pick 11 friends, they're gonna pay us $20, they're gonna Venmo it to us, and what we're gonna do is, we're gonna give them an experience, a sustainable experience. So here's it work. You pay me, I get your address, Natalia, and you're like, okay, what am I gonna, you don't even know what you're getting for it. It's like, I'm gonna take you on a sustainable journey. The first week, you open your mail, and you got a bamboo toothbrush. And then we send you a message saying, hey, look, your whole life, all you got was plastic. Here's another better option for you. And there are 2. Just use one and keep the other. Like, okay, that's pretty cool. You use it. People love the bamboo toothbrush. Actually, I use it too. It's an amazing feeling. It's better than plastic. Second week, you open your mail again, and you got a collapsible mug, also made of bamboo. We were very creative on that. But it was good because it's like, you're busy, you have to go somewhere all the time, and you always buy coffee. But do you know the impact that it has for you to use that cup instead of like throwing it away? Third week, we wanted to test something different than just saying the product. So we said, you know that second toothbrush? Give it to someone else and explain to them how it's more sustainable and it's more eco-friendly, and it just degrades, how it's better for the environment. And then the final week, I gave them chocolate. I know some of you watch the Netflix show that talks about all the child labor and slavery and exploitation of farmers in Africa, and that's why chocolate can be so cheap. That chocolate that I was sending to you was like $9, it was this big. And it talked about like it being a better option than just buying cheap chocolate, because this one they try to fight, child labor. And I tested it out. All I'm doing now, this whole month, was just sitting with them and asking open questions. One of the main questions that I ask is, would you pay for the next month? If you do, here's my Venmo. Literally. So if you have an idea, if you're itching about something, it's up to your personal motivation to sit there and say, look, I have all it takes, and I have some time in the evenings, in the weekend, to test stuff. So you can. And that's how I actually got into product management. I didn't get it through my day-to-day, because I was working at a law firm. I got it from the night times and the weekends working in my startup and giving pitches and talking to people. So that's a key way for you to get into this field. Questions?
Last question before I kick us out. None?
What? Please take the survey.
Yes.
My LinkedIn is in there too if you want to connect.
There. Hey.
Thank you.
So I want to thank Diogo, because for you who are not product managers yet, it's super hard to get into the mind of somebody who's doing the role and be able to ask all these questions. And he's been lucky. He's a great company, in a great position at the company. Connect with him on LinkedIn. I might have your LinkedIn thing.
It's also on the link. So if you click on the
Yes. So if you do a survey, obviously, I'm gonna take Diogo on a tour to other cities, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
see
thank you everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Just a couple of things. Yes, please. Thank you. Our new media person, Alexander, for taking the pictures. I guess it's just another QR code to know more about product school, and if you want to take their classes. And let's see what else. Well, nobody really came here through the through the meetup, but that's usually where we're gonna put some of the links and the stuff that Diogo was talking about. The books that he was talking about, and some of the other things that he mentioned. I'll put it there in the comments for everybody to grab it. And oops, that. So you mentioned Nishan, trying to get Nishan to come next time. Well, that's the meetup. Also on the meetup, you're gonna find out there's a lot of webinars that Progress School puts out, also on our meetup group. The next one is coming up on February 5th. There's also a senior PM at CNN. They have great talks, usually 30, 40 minutes throughout the day. And that's no, so if you take a picture of that, that's a free product book that the Progress School put out recently. And there's also, that's what I remember. Progress School just came out with it's more like a survey.
It's a really good report, and
It's a
it has
report.
information on where people are located, the salaries that are given. So really cool stuff about
So
product
make
management.
sure you visit the meetup for the link. We'll just reach out to any of us, for that. And with that, we're looking to have next month, the next meetup here. Probably here in the same place. Make sure you follow us on the meetup or online somewhere.
Thank you.
But thank you.